Everything good in life is forged on the anvil of adversity. We want to start a movement of high achievers that have the courage to fashion a life of greatness. A movement of those brave enough to face the fires of self-improvement on the journey to peak expression. Smiths build things. Smiths get the job done. We are All Smiths. Welcome to the All Smith Project, where greatness is forged, not found. The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the All Smith Project. Today's guest is a fitness model and actor, and he's most known for his work in the health and fitness industry. He's the host of the Maximize Man podcast, and he's currently focused on helping men over 50 live their healthiest body. None other than Clark Bartram. Welcome to the show, man.
Let's go, brother. Bring up the energy, man. This is about motivating and encouraging and lifting people up.
I love that, man. You're quite the electric factory, and I'm pumped to unpack that today and pick your mind a little bit. And I appreciate you making the time to jump into it. This is podcast number 3 for you today, bro.
Yeah, and I flew to Sacramento yesterday to do Mark Bell's Power Project.
That's awesome.
And so I popped up to Sacramento and back, hit the ground running this morning, went to the gym, came home, did a podcast with someone that I just met in the Dominican Republic at an event I spoke at. And then did Lee Labrada's podcast. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a legendary bodybuilder. And then now here we are with you, man. So
I
that's
love
what it's all about. It's my goal and my purpose in life is to get on as many platforms as I can to spread whatever message we're spreading today.
Very cool, man. Mark Bell, that guy has been an amazing human in the fitness space for quite some time. I actually did a powerlifting seminar with him and Jesse Burdick back in the day. And I'm a big fan of his. Jesse Burdick was a legend back in the day with regards to the squat, the bench, and the deadlift. And I just remember at the time I was working with the fire department, and I attended their seminar the next day. And the night before, we were fighting a fire till real late at night, till like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And Mark and Jesse just put on an epic seminar. I remember Jesse smacked the hell out of the back of my neck, and I approached a 1-rep max deadlift, which at the time was 500 pounds. And I ended up being successful on it on literally like 2 or 3 hours of sleep just because of all the awesome technique things that they discussed, ramping up the nervous system, a healthy dose of caffeine too. But it was a cool experience. So anytime I hear Mark Bell's name, I think about that experience.
Yeah, Mark is awesome, man. He's evolved so much as a human and as an athlete, and he's such an intelligent person who really gave me an opportunity yesterday to come up and talk about what it is that I'm going through personally. You know, it's not often when someone with that big of a podcast will have you come back for a second time. And I reached out to him and thought, you know what, he's got a great audience that needs to hear my message right now. And he was so open to it, man. He's such a kind human. That's what I love about that guy the most is
I agree.
For people to see him on the outside, they just see this big, strong power lifter. Now he's a guy who's transitioned into running marathons, which is an amazing stretch of athletic prowess. So, yeah, I can't say enough good things about Mark.
That's amazing, man. And so to give you a little bit of context, in 2018, I was still competing in the sport of CrossFit. And one day I was training down at our facility in downtown San Diego at Invictus, and I received a phone call from my sister. She was incredibly distraught, and she mentioned to me that my father was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And not equipped with the tools to handle that. I remember walking outside, bawling my eyes out, and thinking to myself, all right, like, this is where we use all the tools that we've acquired up until this point to be 100% focused and present for my family. And at that time, it was very confusing, and it was, quite frankly, a mystery looking forward. And now looking back, it seems like science. But every night I'd coach till about 8:30 at night, San Diego, drive up to LA where my dad was being treated for terminal brain cancer. And when he was awake between chemo, man, I'd look at him and I'd say, man, he has a story I know absolutely nothing about. I know him as my dad, but he went to Vietnam and, had this whole life before I ever existed, with training and real estate and construction and all the different hats that he wore across his life. And so I'd ask him, hey, what was life like with mom? What was your dating life like? What was training like? What were some of the highest highs and the lowest lows? And we just had some of these epic conversations. I remember at the time I was like, man, I think I need to go on a listening tour and talk to people that have incredible stories to tell. And so when I heard your most recent podcast, and have been following you for quite some time, Clark, what you're doing on sharing your story and the vulnerability, I think is so powerful. And your most recent episode on your Maximized Man podcast, titled Check It Like a Man, is where I really wanted to start our conversation today. I wanted you to be able to share your story, and then for us to kind of play ping pong back and forth, with you very well knowing that our podcast over here at the Allsmith Project was born based on me interviewing my father when he was going through the most vulnerable time in his life.
Man, so sorry to hear about your father. What ended up happening? Is
He was
still with
supposed
us?
to live 4 months. He was in his early to mid 70s, and he ended up living 12. And I smirk at that because every day we were like, we're defying the odds. And we learned in that time that people need 3 things: something to do, someone or something to love, and something to look forward to. And the two of us really looked forward to our little chats. I was just this little curious poker, like bear poker, just trying to understand the ins and outs as to why he was the way he was. And when he passed away later in 2018, it's like, you know what? I'm going to continue this podcast journey and give other people the safe space to share their story.
That's phenomenal, man. It reminds me of Tuesdays with Maury.
Yep.
And your description of what you do, you said, I'm going on a listening tour. I've never heard that in my life. I absolutely love how you framed that, because everyone has a podcast. Everyone loves to talk. Everyone loves to hear themselves talk. But the fact that you said listening tour and a platform for other people to share their story, because that is what the world needs to hear, is fascinating. And you do a really good job, bud. I've been on a lot of different podcasts, and you have a gift of being able to interview. I can see it already. So I just want to encourage you to continue with what you're doing, as hard as it gets sometimes, and as much as we want more following, whatever it is that our human side takes over. I just want to encourage you to continue to push through and persevere, because you're on to something here. You really are.
I appreciate that, man. It's something that you get to a point in life where you're like, this particular thing lights my heart on fire, and I want to share it with as many people as possible. And at the end of the day, as I observed with my father, you don't take money, you don't take all your accomplishments, you don't take the badge of honor saying, I worked more. You take with you the memories, the experiences, the special stories, how you helped other human beings along the way, and hopefully leaving the world better than when you found it. And, that is a huge part of this project. And with that being said, man, I'd love to hear about your story a little bit, because your willingness to share and really pushing people to get checked via these really awesome test kits that you're putting out there. It's just great tools to allow for privacy and intimacy, so people who don't feel comfortable going into a hospital to get a full blood panel, they have a resource at their availability to then take a peek under the hood and understand what's going on in their bodies.
Yeah, and that's exactly what needs to happen. Most people don't realize that their health is something that they have the right to be in control of, and they should. take control of it. And it was a simple blood test that really altered the course of my life in this direction. And I'm grateful that I sat there that day in the parking lot of Crunch Gym that my buddy Steve Kleinfelter owns. I was working with a company called Merrick Health, and I had a concierge doctor by the name of Jariah, and we were looking at my blood work. And I was focused on the testosterone because, as you probably know through your research on me, I have helped men online boost their testosterone naturally. I can probably say that I have high levels of testosterone. I look the way I do without any exogenous help. I take no pills, no potions, no gadgets, no gimmicks. I have no TRT, none of that stuff. So that was where I was focused. And that's what I was looking at the day he said, hey, that's all cool, but your PSA is elevated. You might want to go to the doctor. So I'm like, all right, man, I'm Clark Bartram, no big deal. I'm going to, I feel invincible. When you look a certain way, you feel invincible, but I'm not, and I'm mortal like everybody else on the planet. And this is proof of that. So I go to my doctor and he does the digital rectal exam, feels something in there. He's like, yeah, I'm a little, I feel something on the upper right-hand side, but I'm not too concerned. So if my doctor wasn't concerned, I wasn't concerned. So I went on about my life, not thinking twice about it, not taking it as seriously as I should have. This is the first point that I want to make very clear to everyone listening, male, female, young, old, black, white, doesn't matter, fit, unfit. You need to understand that you need to take this seriously. The second you hear a doctor say, then you go, what? And then you find out, because I drug my feet. So then we go in to the next stage to get an MRI. The insurance turned it down. I didn't think twice. I got the letter. I'm like, oh, they turned it down. It must not be that big of a deal, right? Because again, I'm so focused on the aesthetic. That's what I've done. Magazine covers, movies, sports, all the stuff that I've done with my physical prowess has blinded me to what is really more important than anything else. So then I get the MRI done, and then I get this number back that's called a PIRAD score. And you're probably familiar with some of these terms now, having gone through what you did, unfortunately, with your father. And my PIRAD score was 5 out of 5. And the doctor's like, dude, there's like an 85% chance that you have cancer unless you're some anomaly. And I was joking around. I'm like, bro, look at me. I am an anomaly. Mm-hmm. I look the way I look at my age. Nobody looks this way. Partially kind of brushing it off, knowing that at some point I was going to hear something that I didn't want to hear necessarily. So then from there, we go to the biopsy, which I've learned so much about these steps and how to thoughtfully take these steps without rushing into them. So I get the biopsy, a 12-core random biopsy. And out of the 12 core samples, just a cheap little plastic gun, they shoot it into your prostate. It hurts like hell. Feel like you're going to piss all over the place, bleeding everywhere afterwards. 7 of the core samples came back cancerous. And the Gleason score, I had a 7 all across the board, but 6 of them were 3+4, which isn't too concerning, even though it's a 7. The one that was concerning was the 4+3, 4 meaning there are more cancerous cells in that one biopsy. So that's what they focus in on. Nothing else matters at that point. So you got a 4+3. So that 4+3 then took me to the next one of, okay, a 4+3, we want to look and see if this metastasized anywhere else in the body. So I did the PSMA PET scan, which is pretty new technology. And I got in there to scan your entire body with some stuff in there to glow if they see any tumors. And sure enough, boof, right there, in the prostate. And that's a confirmation of what they saw. Luckily, it was nowhere else in my body. So right now, I have been diagnosed with unfavorable intermediate risk type 2C prostate cancer, which what that means is that's what's my cancer. It doesn't matter what anybody other guy has. I have a very specific cancer in my body, in my prostate, even though it's called prostate cancer, that I need to treat according to me. And that's really a conversation that we could go down because, again, you probably understand this a whole lot more than you ever wanted to.
Totally. I appreciate you sharing that, man. When you got that diagnosis, as someone who prides themselves on taking care of every T you're going to cross, every I you're going to dot, and you're trying your best, mind, body, and spirit, to make sure that you are doing your best to be your best. How did that feel emotionally? Like, what were the thoughts traveling in between your ears when you got that news? And what was the process of kind of surrendering to, hey, I'm okay, and I'm going to process this one step at a time?
It was instant for me. Anyone that knows me knows I'm a let's go kind of guy. And that's kind of my saying, let's go, and I'm screaming that everywhere. And God's honest truth, I was sitting right here, and when he started going in the direction of where I knew he was going to go, we did find cancer, because everybody's seen it online. That's what he said, Clark, we did find cancer. I immediately, in that moment, leveled up. I knew that I was the best guy to get this diagnosis. For a fact, I know I'm the best guy to get this diagnosis. And I haven't had a bad day. I haven't been sad. I haven't said, woe is me, because it's me with it. Like, I'm in the driver's seat. Now, if it were someone else, like your situation, it's much harder to deal with. And I wouldn't want to be in that situation. I would rather it be me, because I know my approach. I know my mindset. I know how I tackle things in my life. I know how I went into the Marine Corps and said, I'm going to be the best Marine in this place. And I graduated with honors, and I got meritoriously promoted. And when I play sports, I'm the guy on the field that's being, come on, let's go. I'm that guy. So I knew that I was the best guy for it, because it was going to widen my ability to reach men who I'm already talking to, because now it's made me a regular guy. Where before it was like, Clark, look at that fit older guy or whatever. Now I'm like, oh, wow, this guy's got cancer. I better go get checked. Shit, if he's got it, I better go get checked. Honey, look at this dude on the internet. Yeah, I know he's good looking and ripped and all that stuff. Stop looking, stop staring. He's got cancer. I better go get checked. And she'd be like, well, I've been telling you that for a year. It took that guy to have it for you to go get checked. So I'm not saying I'm some sort of God scapegoat or something like that. I'm saying I'm a great messenger of this message of check it like a man.
Yeah,
There's no one better on the planet than me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I like that you're living that, not just saying it, where your actions and your words align, which are very cool. It's very heroic. And then a couple other things that come to mind when you share some of that story ideation is that your story one day is going to be somebody else's survival guide. The fact that you're not surrendering, there's a standard that you're holding yourself to. You're not leaving any stone unturned. You're exploring and checking everything, despite passing the eye test clearly. You know that there's more information to be detected, and then seeking to understand and asking the experts. But what I really appreciated about your last podcast episode, Clark, was that you did this amazing hybrid moment of conversation, which was, hey, I'm also going to do the reactive medicine side where I have this thing. I'm going to go pursue information with the guys in the white lab coats and different forms of treatments to ensure that I'm taken care of. And you said, your words, thank God for that type of medicine. But then simultaneously, you said, hey, I'm going to look into the appropriate drinks, the appropriate foods. I'm going to do different forms of naturopathic medicine and integrate my exposure therapy of sauna and ice and red light therapy and breathing and some of the things that you learned in your studies with Paul Chek and other people like him. I love that because it's this unison between what I would categorize as preventative medicine and reactive medicine, showing that, like, guys, we're on the same team. What's the goal? To get Clark back to functioning like a badass, cancer-free, and hopefully learn some things along the way that he can share with other people that may or may not go down a similar journey. And let's equip the world with more tools so this doesn't happen to them.
Yeah, I'm glad that you see that, and thank you for doing your research, because that's so impressive to me that you really truly understand where it is that I'm coming from. Some people would take sound bites and completely take them out of context. And unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. But if anyone listens to a whole entire podcast of me talking about certain things of why I feel I got cancer and what was a very big contributing factor and how I am approaching it on both sides of the fence, if you will, and how I want
Mhm.
these doctors to not be at odds, but to communicate with each other and say, look, this is our friend, our patient, this human who's out here trying to overcome this situation. How can we come together and collectively agree on certain things and procedures and modalities that's going to help this man? I realize that PubMed doesn't say anything about a Mediterranean diet, but would you agree with me that it's best for him to be in a lean and strong body? Absolutely. Okay, good. Now we can start building on this conversation instead of being at odds with each other like it seems to be right now. It doesn't need to work that way. Medicine should not work in silos. And it's unfortunate that we live in a world that that is the way it operates. Your podiatrist is here, your cardiologist is here, your endocrinologist is here. And it's seldom that they have deep and meaningful conversations about a human that they're treating, because it's the world's too fast and too many things are in the way of that happening. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm making those collaborative efforts happen, even if I'm just an intermediary between those different people that I've put in my care.
Yeah, I really admire that. And I think the reason why the world does that is compartmentalizing and putting fields and careers and people, quite frankly, in boxes allows for the creation of systems. And systems are great because they allow you to funnel monetization. Unfortunately, when you're talking about human lives, there should be a synergistic collaboration. In reality, I've heard you talk about it before, mind, body, and spirit. You can't really separate the three. They all synergistically work together as part of our health and wellness lifestyles and protocols and how they positively or negatively influence each other. And simultaneously, it's impossible for anyone, whether they're a doctor or a fitness professional, to have all the information on everything all the time, especially with so much stuff readily available and continually to evolve and adapt. And with so much education now, as far as MDs being in the field of big pharma, in the field of legalities, justifiably so, because we don't want to have any doctors practicing medical malpractice or writing scripts or prescriptions for things that could potentially have life-altering effects. So I totally honor it. But at the same time, instead of just like holding on to that patient, I think it'd be so helpful to be like, I'm very interested in this, but I'm probably not the best expert here. Let's collaborate with a friend of mine or with another doctor on this. And the key word there is collaborate, not, hey, I'm going to send you to a specialist, where you kind of write them off and then that person is gone and then you don't really see them again. It's kind of this like treat the patient like a number that I don't really like. And unfortunately, and I blame myself and many other, podcasters probably, I'm pointing out the problem right now, and it's not very solution oriented. But my hope is that the conversation starting between like-minded individuals and somebody going through prostate cancer like yourself and other forms of cancer, it creates a conversation at the very least so that the masterminds can come together and be like, you know what? We're human beings first. How do we create a medical system and a system of care where we help people move the needle in the right direction and we're all on the same team?
Yeah, we're starting to see some of that with these concierge doctors who have left the standard of care practice of medicine and moved into a solo type of practice where they can be integrative in their approach and not be tethered by the insurance companies and HIPAA, and HIPAA to the degree that if they were working in a hospital, they could only do certain things. They have a little bit more freedom to collaborate, to your point, with other practitioners who bring in maybe an Eastern philosophy that is certainly as beneficial as Western philosophy is. And understanding, like, it really bothers me when people are so against Western medicine because they act as if there are a bunch of bad people out here trying to steal money. That's not the case.
No way.
To your point a minute ago, they're specialists.
Mm-hmm.
They specialize in something, trying to get really good. That's why when you go to recruit a basketball player, you want a point guard. He's specialized in bringing that ball down, telling the team what that needs to happen, and then boom, he scores the points. He makes the play. Like, he is a specialist. You're not asking him to get underneath the rim and get rebounds. Somebody else specializes in that. But collectively, there's a winning environment that's created. So that's kind of what I see happening. And if we can understand that people are really in it to help, they're handcuffed, unfortunately, by the system that we live in. But it doesn't need to mean that you don't have the ability to seek things. So that's where my journey comes in, hiring these other people who are practicing different ways. Like the guy that I'm engaging with in Scottsdale, Tom Incledon, when you go into his wellness center with full of cancer patients, there's not one bald person. There's no one walking with an IV full of chemo drugs. It's a gym. They're lifting weights. And he's saying, if in fact they do need to go get their pancreas removed or whatever they're dealing with specifically, they will be stronger, they will be leaner, they will be more mentally capable because he built them up. He didn't just instantly go to the worst case scenario, which you've seen, just pumping someone full of chemo and having them have moments of clarity before they fall back asleep again. He's saying, no, I want this person to be as strong as possible. He has old ladies in there dumbbell rowing 70 pounds. They probably never picked up a dumbbell in their life till they walk into the Sky Center. And if anyone disagrees with that, then they are in malpractice, in my opinion.
I like that too, because it absolutely eliminates the victim mentality. It's almost empowering and creating an environment of like, this is a piece of adversity, and we're going to use this to make the rest of your life the best of your life. And that's what I'm hearing in your tone of voice and in your body language, which I think is very powerful for people that may be going on a journey very similar to this. Move fast and break shit. LSKD develops functional sportswear with a streetwear aesthetic that's on a mission to inspire you to chase the vibe through sport, fitness, and adventure. I train daily in the rep shorts and love the versatility they offer. The zipper pocket is an absolute game changer. I go from training at the gym directly to meetings, running errands, or prepping for podcasts. The LSKD tribe has become true family, and we are excited to continue to develop our community. Shop now at lskd.com and use code ALLSMITH. We chase the vibe here at AllSmith. Let's all become 1% better every day. My next question for you is around the concept of identity. And that's really around, you've been diagnosed with cancer. And I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and there was an instance where somebody was doing something where it could have elicited vengeful style behavior. And he said, Bryce, I choose to treat people appropriately, not because they deserve it, but because I choose to be an honorable person. And in this particular instance, you're not necessarily identifying as a human being with cancer. You're identifying as Clark, and this happens to be something that is colliding with you on your journey towards your peak expression. And my curiosity here is around, how have you been able to create such an honorable and heroic identity after getting news like this?
I think it's just who I am, because I have learned with age and experience and exposure to so many men through my coaching program that the gift of life that we have is so precious, and the interpersonal relationships that we encounter on a day-to-day basis, whether they're just two ships that pass in the night or they're relationships that are bonding and enriching, I'm so grateful for those. So I don't ever want to be a guy that walks into a room and brings the energy down. I always will be the guy that walks into the room and it's like, what just came in here? They feel the energy before they see the person. And when they see the person, they're experiencing the energy. And they're not captivated by any of the other things. This is all a tool that I use to share my message. And my message is my purpose statement in life is to positively and powerfully affect everyone I come into contact with. That's with or
I love
without
that.
cancer. It doesn't matter. It didn't change because I got cancer. And honestly, it elevated my game. I have gotten more focused. I've gotten more grateful. I've gotten more appreciative. I've slowed down even more. It's healing my relationship with my wife. It's helping me be more forceful in the things that I say to people and not be afraid to be as aggressive as I know I should and can be with people who I know need to be on the other end of an energy that is one that's going to get their attention to wake them up to make a change. Like I see things differently now than I've ever seen them before. Like I'm literally, when I came out on my 60th birthday and said, I'm now Clark Bartram version 6.0, that was a real thing that happened to me. And cancer was a part of it. So I actually lost a very, very good friend of mine because he made a comment to me that was off brand for who I am as a person who was given this diagnosis, and took a thumbnail that was on my Instagram page completely wrong and went down the wrong road with it. So I decided at that point, I don't need you in my life anymore. I'm going to lose your number and I'm going to move on. So that's how steadfast I am with this version of me, that I'm going to bring my best. And if I'm not getting your best, then it's over. It's just that chapter of my life is done. You were in it. That's great. Move on.
I definitely honor that, man. And I mean, when you get to a point in life where you start facing your own mortality, you start to think different. You take tremendous courage for each micro moment. And I almost wish all of us would do that a little bit sooner. I said that when my father passed away. I was very fortunate to have those 12 months to celebrate him and connect with him. So I don't live with any regrets. But so many people came to the funeral and were like, he was so great here, so great there. I wish I got more time with him. And in my brain, I don't understand why we as human beings wait to celebrate people when they're gone, as opposed to just celebrating them in each moment of interaction as if they could be gone tomorrow. I think utilizing that thought experiment could give us great gratitude for each interaction that we have. But simultaneously with that, you are a big proponent of nutrition, and you have all these amazing recipes and cooking things that you love to share. But nutrition is not just what we consume with our food. It's also what we watch. In this particular instance, who we choose to spend our time with, having the news on, as you've alluded to in other conversations, in the background of your workouts, and what's being integrated subconsciously into our systems. I mean, there's so much talk now around the toxicity with lotions and water and all these different filtrations, but we don't take into consideration what's coming into our ears. Even if we're not paying attention to it, it could be absorbing in a very small micro fashion. And that also has to do with who you choose to spend time with. If they're not elevating you and they're constantly bringing you down and you're trying to build them up, at some point you have to make that uncomfortable decision to have a filtration for more than just your water, but also who you choose to spend your time and energy with.
That would be the biggest area in life where you need to have a very serious filter. We hear this concept of feeding our soul. So we're always focused on nutrition, to your point. Like, what am I eating? Am I eating a low carb diet? This, that, and the other thing. And we completely bypass the other more important part, what you just spoke of, because it's not anything that is represented on the aesthetic side, the physical side, the body side. We're so focused on this. And I was the guiltiest of all, because like I said at the beginning, I was focused on my numbers. I was the guy on the magazine covers. I'm the guy that's always getting complimented on how I look and how I can run and catch a pass and do all of these things that I do. But I was overlooking the more important parts in allowing these influences into my life. And I realized that a lot of the stress that that causes is one of the reasons that I have this diagnosis. I know this for a fact. There's no one that can tell me any different about why I have this. And so people will oftentimes look for one culprit when it's not one thing that gets you in a situation. It's not one thing that gets you out of a situation. Take losing weight, for example. I'm not going to tell someone just get on the treadmill and walk. There's a whole host of other things. That's why I have my 5 principles that are mindset, meals, movement, community, and integrity. And that's not one that's talked about often, because if we're not living a life of integrity, those things that we're doing that are outside what we've been taught as being a good human or whatever it is that our belief system revolves around, it manifests somehow. And typically that's in stress. And stress has to manifest somehow. And typically that's being obese or some sort of fibromyalgia or something like that. I believe that my stress and the things that I was not doing as good as I knew I could have been doing them has manifested in what the world refers to as prostate cancer.
The body definitely keeps the score, man. That's for sure. And I love that you talked about integrity there, because so much of lifestyle design and health and fitness is associated with who are you when nobody's watching? What decisions are you going to make to optimize movement, optimize mindset, optimize food, your relationships, your consistency, and your work ethic? And I think you do an awesome job sharing those deliverables in a pretty simple fashion that high-performing people can then integrate into their life seamlessly, where it feels harmonious rather than trying to play the role of balance, which in different seasons of life, different things are going to hold a little bit more meaning, which I've heard you talk about before. And I'm just curious, how did you find fitness? I heard you talk a little bit around football being a part of your background when you were younger, but how did you ultimately find your way into the world of bodybuilding and fitness and functional movement?
I needed a job. I needed a job after I got out of the Marine Corps. So my EAS, my end of it, or EAS or whatever it was, EAS is the company I worked with. But anyway, the time you're getting out of the Marine Corps, I had 2 weeks left and I needed a job. So I went to Family Fitness Center, which is now 24-hour, and applied for a job, ended up getting the job, got into training. Now I had lifted weights, right? I lifted weights in down in the basement of the high school. Matter of fact, I took my son there not too long ago when I was back in Ohio. And I lifted weights in the YMCA there, in the Marine Corps, playing rugby and all that sort of stuff. But I was never like a bodybuilder. So then I got this job and I was surrounded by weights every single day. So I started lifting, got a little bit more serious, left that gym, went to a Gold's gym. Right now it's getting more narrow because I'm in a bodybuilding gym. And then I started to realize that I had a predisposition to build muscle relatively quickly. I knew that at a very young age, but now I'm starting to do this more. And then some people in 1988 talked me into getting into a bodybuilding contest. I got into the bodybuilding contest, ended up winning the whole thing the first time out. And then it just snowballed. Then I realized at the backstage of a bodybuilding contest one time, they were taking pictures of this kid. I'm like, I look as good as him. What do I got to do? Then, I just see these things and I move towards them, and I'm relentless. I'm literally relentless. I work until I get it done. So that's the evolution of how I got into this. I've been an active guy my whole life, and just one thing led to another. And then, magazine cover after magazine cover, that led to TV, and TV led to movies, and movies led to speaking engagements. And so it's just been a constant one step in front of the other. And it's like that old saying, take the step, even when you don't see the stepping stone there. And eventually that will, and that's been my life. Like, well, I'm just going to take a shot at this and see what happens. And it worked out.
Yeah, you miss 100, all the shots actually that you don't take, right?
Yep.
Like that's that famous analogy. And it sounds so cliche, but it is pretty true as well. And I don't know, man. It's pretty cool to see this constant evolution that you've been on. You mentioned the acting gig. How were you found? Did you hire an agent? Did you attend casting calls? How did that kind of come to be after you integrated into bodybuilding?
None of it was ever anything I sought after. I did modeling, so I went on auditions, and I did a couple auditions for infomercials or whatever, but I never auditioned for movies, maybe one, but it was not a big thing in my life that I wanted to do. So TV came from a guy that was the manager of a gym that I was a sales guy at. And he said, "Hey, there's this
Hmm.
girl named Kiana that's got this fitness show. You might want to go audition for it." And I'm like, what the heck? So I went and auditioned for it, knocked it out of the park. They liked me, got that gig, kept coming back, kept coming back. And then the movie thing, I was sitting in my house here, minding my own business one day when a buddy of mine, a photographer, Jason Ellis, called me up and said, "Hey, there's this guy looking for someone to play Batman." He called me because he saw my business card in a Starbucks. So this guy was looking for a bodybuilder that was athletic, that had features that kind of fit the description that is me. And with the exception of 6 feet, he's like, he was rattling this. I'm like, "Jason, I'm 5'8". He's like, "Well, just go anyway." So I went and auditioned for this role as Batman, ended up getting it. And then that went to the next movie, this one here, Hunter Prey, behind me. Had the lead role in that because I did good. Anytime I show up anywhere, including right now, I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. I don't just willy-nilly walk in here and comb my hair and wake up out of a nap. I'm preparing for this moment because I owe you my best. I owe that director my best. I owe the Marine Corps my best. I owe my wife my best. I owe my son, my daughter my best. And if I'm not my best, I come back and I apologize for not being my best. I can tell you so many times that I've apologized to my kids for acting inappropriately towards their mom in front of them, doing something that was out of character, doing something that wasn't representative of what I think a man should look like. And I'll admit it in a second. And that's where I gain strength is being able to sit down and say, "You know what? Right here in this room, I got on my knees and apologized to my daughter for some things that happened in our life way long time ago that I had no idea was going on in her life until somebody else pointed it out." And there was such a beautiful healing moment in here. And I took a picture of us both crying and sent it to this pastor who kind of brought up the fact, "You might want to talk to your daughter." So
Mm.
I love that. I love that about me. And I'm so proud of myself for being that guy.
Taking ownership, man. There's something really powerful in self-reflection, and then recognizing that, we are going to make mistakes. We're going to have shortcomings, and then leaning in to the uncomfortable conversations, knowing that they're going to move the needle in the right direction, because so much of communication is nonverbal, and there's an energy and a frequency that gets exchanged in the majority of interactions. And clearly you got a little bit of intel. You processed that intel. You then gathered more information to set a safe space to have that conversation with your daughter. And now I bet that that relationship that you have with her is deeper, more meaningful. It has roots, and there's a trust and a bond that's built, knowing that, hey, we make mistakes sometimes, but I've got your back. And knowing that there's true love and commitment there in that relationship, I think is a really powerful thing. And hopefully somebody listening to this, comes across some intel and can lean into that tough conversation to have some depth and some true meaning in the majority of their relationships. You talked a little bit about being the host of a show. I know you hosted the show American Health and Fitness on ESPN. And it's just fascinating to me how a football guy and then a guy that was in the Marines and then an awesome bodybuilder guy all of a sudden develops what I think is the number one fear on the planet, which is public speaking. And it sounds to me that you just jump into the ocean and somehow figure out how to swim with all these skills and tools in your toolbox. What was the experience like for you hosting that show on the prestigious ESPN, knowing that you're going to public speak all the time?
It was fantastic. It's just an extension of who I am. And other people saw it in me. And that's the importance of having wise counsel in your life and people that can encourage you, because I'm actually a shy guy. And I've actually been in moments where I've been riddled with fear when I was walking out. I had a full-blown panic attack getting ready to go on live television on Home Shopping Network in front of 80 million people. Right behind stage, as they were introducing me, I felt tingles going through my entire body. And I thought, I got to get out of here. I can't go out there in front of all these people. I'm going to disintegrate. And that's happened to me more than once. But if you give that fear more credit than it deserves, it becomes bigger than it is, because actually it's nothing. It's nothing. It's us thinking about ourselves. And this last event that I just spoke at in the Dominican Republic, my intro wasn't a joke. It wasn't these things that people tell you to do. It was me standing up there saying, you know what I love? This is how I opened it. You know what I love when I speak? When I'm standing off stage and they're introducing me and I go completely blank. I have no idea what I'm going to say. There's nothing in front of me that I'm memorizing or reading from, that I know it's coming from my heart. Because there's a scripture in the Bible that says, for out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's why it's so important that we fill ourselves up with whatever information it is that we want to share in life. So we're never, ever lacking in the ability to let that go. And if we take ourselves out of the equation and realize it's not about us, it's about the people that paid to be there. It's about the people that traveled to be there. It's about the people that are sitting in the seats, and they came there expecting something that, based upon how you were introduced, you might be able to deliver to them. So the minute you make it about yourself, wondering what they're going to think about your hair, your skin, your muscles, how you speak, and if you do anything wrong, then you're completely missing the boat. So my ability to separate myself from that ego-based thing, and that's a decision every single time, because the ego's, it's not a bad thing. But when it gets in the way of doing what you're called to do, then it becomes something that can certainly be a distraction.
The ego's a powerful tool, man. It can help you, it can hurt you, but it's always there. And so being able to say what's up to it, have a cool relationship with it, and know where and how it fits in your life, I think is very important. I really love this concept that you're talking about, which is being your best. And I think I heard Vanessa Bryant, Kobe's wife, talk about the few times when he was really injured and contemplated not playing in relation to today's game, which there's a lot of load management conversation going on. And he was like, I owe it to the fans that's saved up to afford a ticket, that are up in the nosebleeds, that are coming to this game, to go out there and perform at my best. Because you never know when they're going to be able to come back and have that experience again. And you mentioned showing up as your best consistently over time. And where I want to relate this, Clark, is so many people are in pursuit of the perfect relationship. We could both probably argue that love may be one of the main reasons why we're here on earth, if not the only reason. And that's a conversation that we could have hours and hours on unpacking. But what I see a little bit is, like, when people are together for a long time, there seems to develop some sort of stagnation. They love me for who I am, which then leads to, like, hey, I'm going to settle for less than my best because they love me no matter what. But we could both probably have the conversation around both parties should actually be making each other better consistently over time, because they owe it to their friends, they owe it to their parents, they owe it to their kids, they owe it to their workforce. And you mentioned on another podcast a subtle little reference where you may say those things, hey, I love you no matter what. But if you're a dude who's busting his ass consistently every day, and you look and you feel the part, and your wife happens to be walking past the room and you take your shirt off and you're jacked, and she sees that subtle little hint, she might not say anything. And it might not even just be about the aesthetic. I think it's about the intrinsic thought process of, he does what he says he's going to do. He holds himself to a standard. He eats the way he's supposed to eat consistently over time. And then when it's time to indulge with me or family or those matters, he allows himself those buffers to do so. And it says it about the character or the integrity of the human being, as opposed to just the settling nature of, I love him whether he has a dad bod or not. Will you touch on this a little bit?
Yeah, that transcends beyond your wife. That goes into anyone in your immediate circle. So if my kids are out there, or my kids' buddies are out there, or anyone who happens to be in that energy field, they're having the benefit of seeing that attitude, that consistency, and that relationship with life in general, right? So let me touch on the relationship with my wife for a second here and talk about that. I owe my best to her, and even though in relationship it's not always perfect, I had mentioned earlier that some of what I believe I got my cancer from was from stress. And most of that stress is coming from my marriage for the last 10 years. And I would never lie or make any hint otherwise about that. And a lot of people were saying, even my best friend back in Ohio today said, dude, I could never live that publicly. I could never be that honest about who I am. But here's what I'll say. As hard as it's gotten in my relationship, and as disciplined as I am with my body and the things that I eat and the things that I do, the thing that I'm most proud of about that example that you spoke of a minute ago is the fact that I am continually showing up for my wife, even in the midst of her possibly not being able to show up at the same level, with the same energy, with the same output or the same desire, because she's not me. She's not equipped like I'm equipped. So if I'm really that person that is meant to be there and be the strong one and to be the man, I need to show up. And being physically fit helps you show up better. I don't use it as, oh, I could go off and get any chick I wanted, or I could bail out of here and I wouldn't have to. That's not the objective. The objective for me is to push in, like I am with this diagnosis, to get things on track and to live in harmony. And when my kids see that, when my wife witnesses that, when she knows that she created a situation, but she sees me showing up still, that right there is what brings everyone together. And what I teach my men in my program is like, you got to show up. It's how you show up. And being fit helps you show up. You need to be that dude in the room, like I said earlier, that when you walk in, it's like, whoa, look at that guy. Clothes fit right, nice shoes that aren't dirty, jeans fit good, hair's cut, no hair on the back of your neck. I mean, you're put together on every level because this is a gift. Marriage is a gift. Kids are a gift. All of it is. And I take it seriously. And to my point earlier, it's getting more and more finite in my life. It's more laser focused. And every time I do a podcast like this and I speak and it's coming out of me, I'm like, now I got to live this stuff because my wife can hear me out there. So I'm being accountable to my confession. So the last podcast, the question came up, I'm like, what's my next best move? And the girl asked me back. I said, walking out there and giving my wife a hug and telling her how much I love and appreciate her, regardless of what energy I might be getting, which everything's cool right now. But I'm saying that's what you need to do. And I know that was a long-winded answer for your question, but hopefully I got the bulk of the answer in there with some added benefit because I know people need to hear this. I know it.
I think you're spot on, and it just shows a true commitment. And I think commitment to your family, your wife, bleeds into commitment and all these other things. And I also think something that you touched on there is, yeah, it's really cool to be put together and have a nice clean cut look and feel the part in, you know, all kinds of clothes and whatnot. But you said something really profound that I really appreciated, which was, you know what's more badass? Being able to put on a $4 t-shirt from Walmart and still looking like $1,000,000. So that way the clothes don't make the man make the clothes.
Amen, brother. Absolutely. Yeah. I still need to do that reel. I actually shot the thing. I just haven't found a $3 t-shirt in Walmart lately that I can show it and then cut to me in clothes, because that's going to be one of my new reels that I do because it's important. And a lot of men can't do that. And a lot of men look so slovenly when they get dressed. And I know this is kind of off the path, but it needs to be said, because if you're showing up to work and you're not there because you've been there for so long, that's going to carry into the house. And you mentioned it a little while ago at the beginning of that question. It's like, just because I've been married to her for 34 years doesn't mean I can get fat and out of shape because, oh, I already got her. You know what I mean? There's a lot of men with that attitude, and that's a horrible attitude to have. That's weak.
No, I definitely agree with that. Aside from the recent cancer diagnosis, as you've gone through your health and fitness journey and transitioned into being a thought leader and a businessman. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced?
Being patient with how long it takes to build and scale a business, not getting caught up with what everybody else is doing online and seeing these other thought leaders and influencers and business people, how they're handling their thing, not getting caught up in that energy because it's not my energy and it's not energy that I want. And really just scaling back, because every time we think of scale in business, we're always looking forward. My goal now in life, specifically with this diagnosis, is to scale back and be present in the moment, understanding that I need to have a business that's going to support me as the years go by, and it needs to scale, but I need to get better before I get bigger.
That's a great way to put it. Do you battle imposter syndrome at all, where you're like, man, like, who am I to give this advice to somebody? You know, I'm battling my own challenges, my own issues. And then simultaneously, do you battle the challenge of, am I doing enough? I feel like that's something that's pretty popular amongst influencers and entrepreneurs, of like trying to be everywhere all the time, whether that's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the different profiles all the time. Are these some challenges that you battle a little bit?
Yeah, and that's where having people in your life that you trust. Like, I have a business partner. He's 25 years old. It's a young kid, but he's at an event right now that the company paid for so he can go learn. I made a statement the other day on our team call. I said, I want to be omnipresent. You know, I need my stuff everywhere. Like Andrew Tate, I need my stuff everywhere. And then we left. 2 days later, he came back to me and said, Clark, you know, I've been thinking about the statement you made about being omnipresent. He said, let me ask you a question. 25-year-old kid. He said, what good is he being omnipresent if your message is not consistent? If just for the sake of being everywhere so everyone sees you all the time, but they don't know what the hell it is you're going to say next, you're just going to confuse people. So how about we get the message right and we get it locked in, and then we're just consistent on one platform, and then we own that platform, we own that message, and then we own that customer. You know, speaking strictly business here. I'm like, you know what, dude? You're right. Thank you. And I'm coachable. That's all it took. I said, okay, what do I need to do next? So he texted me today from the event. I said, I listened to Shalene Johnson's son talk about this. I got some great stuff we're going to talk about on Wednesday in our team call. So I'll sit back. I'll let him run the call because he's gathered all this new information. I'll sit there and go, everyone do what Danny just said to do. And we're going to do it, and we're going to execute. And that's just going to be the way it is. And I know my role. So I stay in my lane, as they say, and I let the baker bake the bread. So everybody that I put in a lane, they're in that lane. They don't work for me. We work together. It's a team effort. It's collaborative. We all have the same goal. If you don't share in the message, in the mission, then you don't need to be a part of this team. You're just not a right fit. But everyone, fortunately, is, from all of the coaches to the administrators to my business partner, Danny, and everyone in between. So I've learned to scale it back, not get overwhelmed, not look too far into the future, and just take it one day at a time.
It's great advice, man. In the words of the famous John Wooden, don't allow what you cannot do affect what you can do. And in that same sentence, being very focused on highlighting your strengths and then having the maturity to delegate some of the things that either don't light your heart on fire or the things that maybe could be categorized as weaknesses, giving those to other team members. And it also allows you to scale. If you have your hands in everything, man, it's not possible to, you can't be every single oar that's paddling on the boat. It's important that you take a step back sometimes. And I appreciate you sharing a lot of these stories with us. Something that came to mind when you were talking about nutrition a little while ago is that, and love of your wife and whatnot, and saying that on the previous podcast, the most important thing you can do when you leave that room is walk out and give your wife a hug and remind her how much you care about her. What came to mind there, Clark, was so many people are so concerned with macros and how much protein should I get. But I think it's really cool to think about how many hugs can we give and how many hugs can we get. And I know it sounds, a little woo-woo, or maybe it's soft for some people's ear. But human touch is really important. And that's not just physical touch, but it's emotional touch, it's empathy, it's compassion. It's stepping on the gas when you need to, stepping on the brake when you need to, allowing yourself to coast when you need to, and understanding the rhyme and rhythm of meeting people where they're at. And for you to coach such high-performing men that are selling and working in million-dollar industries, to get them to comply definitely means that you have a level of compassion, but also a way of creating a connection and buy-in where they trust you, which means there's going to be hard conversations that are loud and testosterone-driven and aggressive sometimes, and there's other ones that are a little bit softer. Will you touch on your communication strategy and how you create buy-in with such high-performing males?
Yeah. So first and foremost, the whole hug thing is important to talk about. I heard something recently where they say 8 hugs a day is what a human needs to really just feel loved. So my gym that I go to, the gym, my training partners, I have 3 training partners that I absolutely love, these men. And every day we hug each other when we see, and it's not just like, like that bullshit. It's an embrace, and even to the point where they'll kiss me on my cheek. And I love that so much, man. And it makes me feel emotional because it's not often that you see that happening in a gym, right? And people that classify it with some slang or some demeaning demonstrative word is just stupid. So
I
anyway,
want to touch on something real quick there,
yeah,
just to emphasize what you're saying. It's not a quick dab, little side hug. It's like a real meaningful hug, and especially with what you're going through right now, it's probably a little harder, a little tighter, and a little longer. And I think it's important to note that where you can use physical touch to pull people in and just let them know, like, you're safe here. I got you. And I don't know, it's just a very special moment of exchange, whether it's guys, girls, whoever. It's not a sexual moment at all. It's just like, hey, we're sharing a bond for this quick second, and then we're about to get after it.
I'll tell you, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hugs today in the gym that I can count off the top of my head.
I'm sending a virtual one right now, man.
Right on. I appreciate it. I received it right back at you. So with respect to how I communicate to these high achieving men, first of all, you touched on the point that they respect me. They respect me because of the discipline that they see in me, because people will watch you for an extended period of time before they'll hit the contact me now button. So after they've watched me be consistent for so long, and I'm not a 26-year-old guy with abs. I'm a 60-year-old guy with abs and a whole lot of wealth of knowledge that comes from real life. They reach out, and then when we have an initial Zoom call, I have a God-given ability and gift to hear things and be able to say them back in a way that's aggressive and forceful, but loving and kind, and they know where it's coming from. And I see other people trying to be me. I just brought on a new coach the other day, and I warned him. I said, look, don't try and do what I do, because you cannot pull it off. You don't have the respect that I have. You don't have the track record that I have. Yeah, your physique looks good. You've accomplished a lot in your life. That's not the point. The point is you have not yet earned the respect of this man who's built his own life, raised his own family, built his own business, has way more money than you'll ever probably have in your entire life. And they're surrounded by yes man. And it takes a different man to come in and say, no, 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 that's not what you said. You said this, and I expect that. So why didn't you give me this? Because when you came to me, you said that's what you wanted, and you trusted me, and you gave me a whole lot of your money. I don't understand why it is that you didn't do what you say. Well, Clark, stop. I know what you're going to say. You don't think I've heard it 1,000 times? So this is the conversation and the tone that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And then something will come to me throughout the course of the conversation, like the other day. Well, a few months ago, actually, there was a very, very successful businessman here who owns a well-known company. He was in my garage because he happens to be local enough to come. And he was telling me about all of his business prowess and all of his success. And, that included the amount of money that he's accumulated and how he could easily write a check to get this or that and the other thing. And I was like, what's really interesting to me? You could run all of these businesses and scale them up, but you're the CEO of this, but you can't be the CEO of your own body. I'm really confused.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, oh my God, no one's ever spoke to me that way in my life. I said, because I listened to you and I was curious. Like, you're very curious. You've said, I'm curious. I'm curious. I like that. So I'm curious to know, why is it? And then you know what happened? That dude absolutely changed his life. He went to 180 like that. That was his goal. And he told me, I can't get to 180. I'm like, no, you can. We just haven't figured out the right formula, the right strategy, whatever language you want to put it in for business. We can use those words very easily. I can relate to you on that level, and we can frame it that way. That's not a problem.
It's the beauty of perspective. You put it in words that resonated with his ethos and his value system, and things that when he looks in the mirror, he sees a businessman. He sees money in the bank account being the motivating factor and how he can live his life on his terms in that arena. But then you related that to being the CEO of his body, and then realizing that the choices that he makes actually dictate how the longevity, the depth that he has in his life, and also being able to multi-purpose or scale what the success is that he already has, and maybe being able to 10x it over time. I think that's genius, but also a great retrospective question for us to kind of sit with ourselves, because we all should be the CEOs of our body.
Who else is going to be? You know what I mean? No one else is going to be. I said this the other day in a podcast. I've never felt so alone in my life, because I know I'm surrounded by people that love me, but I know if I don't do the work and I don't do the research and I don't come up with my plan and I don't trust the right people and I don't invest into the right things, that my life could be seriously different in a very short period of time. So as much as I'm surrounded by people, I am the CEO of this process that is in a 4-stage thing right now. 1, slow the cancer. 2, stop the cancer. 3, destroy the cancer. And 4, heal the reasons for getting the cancer. That's my mission. And I'm the CEO of that process. So each day I have to look at that and like, how am I slowing the process of this cancer? Boom. And I have things that I'm doing. How am I going to stop the cancer? There's things that I'm doing. How am I going to destroy it? Like, get it out of my body. Then how am I going to heal all the reasons why I got it? So that's my mission.
That's very well said, man. What is something you did as a child that you no longer do as an adult? For many, that answer is play. RX Smart Gear allows for your daily workouts to turn into play and exploration. In my training, the Frevo rope gives me access to a versatile rope that I can take with me wherever I go. On the road, at the beach, to the park, or playing at home, RX Smart Gear jump ropes fit my needs. We at Allsmith trust RX Smart Gear. Their gear is always reliable and gives me peace of mind that I will have top-notch equipment to support my health and fitness journey. Hop on over to RX Smart Gear and use the discount code ALLSMITH to shop their latest cutting-edge gear. Have your gear work with you and not against you. Specifically on your social media, you talk quite a bit around helping people boost testosterone. And with somebody of your physique, I know countless times you probably get the conversation around TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. It's pretty popular now. We're hearing a lot of conversation around peptide therapy as well. A lot of big time fighters and whatnot with elbow pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, utilizing the BPC 157. You're seeing that mixed with thymosin beta, and then some of the human growth hormone peptides that we're seeing, CJC 1295 with ipamorelin, some of the other ones. What are your thoughts, first and foremost, around things like peptide therapy and testosterone therapy? I know Rogan talks pretty highly of them. If somebody takes a blood panel and it's appropriately doctor prescribed, I think there can be some amazing tools there, especially as people age. Unfortunately, the human mind loves to think, if some is good, more is better. So many of these things often get abused. But what are your thoughts on some of these different protocols that are being used for health and wellness right now?
Well, like I said, thank God for our scientific breakthroughs in medicine with respect to cancer treatment. Thank God for BPC 157. Thank God for synthetic testosterone and all of these other tools that are meant to be supplements to a lifestyle that should be first and foremost. The problem is most men, because of guys like Joe Rogan, and I'm not saying he's doing anything wrong, but he has such influence and people see him, they don't know all of what Joe Rogan does. They don't know that Joe Rogan could kick your head off because he's practiced so long and so hard. They don't know all of the amount of, I mean, half the people don't even know that Joe Rogan was on a sitcom way back in the day and when he had hair. So they just see this man and they hear him talk about it. So they just run to the nearest strip mall and go to a testosterone clinic and expect that to be the thing that helps them when they don't see Joe Rogan telling his chef, cook me this salmon and that asparagus and do this and gets in this cold bath and all of these other things that he shows, but you don't know the depth of what he's done to get to where he's at today. So all of that stuff works, but it's not magic. And for me personally, have you ever gone on a streak of not doing something and you don't want to break the streak?
Oh yeah,
right? Like
meditation's one of them, man. I love using the Calm app, and like every time I go on a streak, I'm like, no wonder I'm feeling so good right now. I should probably keep this habit alive.
Yeah, so I am on a streak of not being on TRT, and everyone expects that I am because of the way they look, and everyone expects that I should be because of my age, and everyone expects that, oh, the only way that you can look that way is if you are. So I am now on this streak of life where I am like, no, I don't want to do it. How far can I push this back? I'm not saying I never will. I'm not saying it's not a possibility, but right now, even if I wanted to, I couldn't, because you know what they want to do to me, because I have prostate cancer, is strip me of my testosterone collectively altogether in a whole. Take me down to zero. Put me in menopause. That's part of the treatment for my cancer. So I'm pushing back and telling them, no, that's not happening. So I certainly couldn't go get on some right now, because regardless of what side of the fence I'm talking to for medicine, whether it's standard of care or holistic, they're going to go, bro, why are you feeding this with what we know is
could help the cancer grow and potentially metastasize for sure.
Yeah. It didn't cause, like, testosterone does not cause prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is fed by testosterone after you get it for whatever reason you got it for.
Mm-hmm. You know, you've also talked about some of the best sources of medicine out there, and I totally agree with being sleep, exercise and training, exposure therapy, sauna and ice, and I'm going to add one, being laughter. I think that's a great healing mechanism as well. And when you look at exposure therapy, extreme heat, we've all listened to Andrew Huberman talking about how you can 10x human growth hormone with various protocols that both him and Dr. Rhonda Patrick talk about. The most recent one being the 30 minutes on, 5 to 20 minute cooling strategy, and then doing that 3 times through without immediate cold exposure. And there's a few other variances that you can play with as well. But you're a big user of the hot and the cold. And I'm sure that funnels into skincare, stress management, and obviously being able to optimize human growth hormone ratios and testosterone. Have they asked you to back that off? And what are your thoughts on how those protocols can be beneficial to other people on their health and wellness journey?
See, standard of care will not recognize that because it's not in PubMed anywhere. If it's not in PubMed and there's not a published study on it, they're going to just write it off like, we don't have enough data to back that up. The other guy on the other side is encouraging all of that. He's the reason I bought the EWAT system. He's the reason I got the steam sauna out there. My dry sauna is heating up right now. When I get done with this, I'm going to go get in my hot tub, then put on my sweatsuit, then get in that sauna, sweat my butt off because I chose not to do the EWAT tonight. Then I'm going to come in here and do the red light therapy, or I could do the red light therapy and the infrared therapy at the same time because I have a red light in there as well. So this doctor, the holistic one, is encouraging that. And if I tell the other ones, they'll be like, meh, whatever. Yeah, sure. Why not? Go for it.
Yeah.
It won't be, like, do that, man. We want you to do it. And even to the point where I don't believe, based upon conversations I've had with some of these oncologists, that if a guy who was 100 pounds overweight came in, they wouldn't encourage him to lose as much weight as possible until his date came up to start his radiation. They wouldn't do it because they'll say,
Wow.
oh, well, he'll get radiation as good as you'll get radiation. That really doesn't factor in. Are you dumb?
The
Really?
thing that's so interesting about all this too is like just sheer trial and error. Even if we took all the experts out, all the research that we see on the things that we just mentioned, which are sleep, moving the body, training, lifting heavy things, sprinting every once in a while, as Mark Sisson would say, sauna and cold, laughter. If we took away all the data, on the other side of practicing all of those different modalities, you feel better. You think better. You have decreased pain. Your relationships are better. How you orient yourself in the world and your life experiences are better. And I'm no rocket scientist. I'm no doctor. But I talk about all of those things on almost every single episode. And I just hope that people are listening to that, because on the other side of those things is the life that you want to live. And I'm sure they're huge parts of the conversations that you have. And they sound like they're common sense. But I think most people have the information. You can Google it. You can chat GBT the information. What most people need is the accountability, the consistency, and the commitment. And so when you're coaching these high level and high performers that are doing amazing in the business space, and you're delivering this information, how do you get the actionables consistently over time to drive the change?
I listen. And so just like you did your research on me, and you know enough about me to have a meaningful and thoughtful and conversation that can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I appreciate the hell out of that. If I go speak at an event and I know that I'm going to speak at a truck rental company or whatever it is, I'm going to learn the culture and be able to say things that are specific to that culture and speak in language and tone and attitude and all of that is familiar to that culture. So that way they're like, oh, wow, this guy gets us. So I'll give you a case example of a very high level achiever who was probably 75 pounds overweight when he met me. And he runs a very big company. And I was listening to him. And he told me that he had a meeting coming up, a big meeting. So after our whole conversation went down, I said, how do you want to show up at that meeting? He's like, wow, I'd like to be less weight. I said, okay, good. Well, let me tell you what is being said while you're up there speaking 75 pounds overweight. There are younger guys looking at you who want your position, who are 10, 15 years younger than you, 75 pounds lighter than you, look better than you, and they're saying, look at this fat bastard. He's going to have a heart attack, and I'm going to have his job one of these days. Do you want these people saying this about you? So if, in fact, you know that's true, and he admitted, yeah, I know that's true, Clark. That hurt to hear you say that. So I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you. So again, I have this ability to say and do things because I listen and understand and can apply. Like, it's God-given gift, man. I know it. Like, when I do this, I can tap into something that just isn't normal. And I think it ultimately comes back to the fact that I care and I love people and I want to see the best in them. So when I'm saying these hard things that most people would never say because they're full of yes men, yeah, I'm saying, look, here's what you need to do now to get an actionable item. I need you to show up to that next meeting 50 pounds less. Do you believe that you can do it as much as I believe you can do it? And then I leave it there. And then in sales, the next person to speak is the one that loses. But in this case, they win because they're putting themselves out there. And I always teach my guys, you're only committed to what you confess. Now that you said you want to lose that 50 pounds before July 1st for your next meeting, here's what I'm going to tell you to do next. You're going to shoot a video as soon as we're done. You're going to post it in the WhatsApp group, and you're going to say, I just got off a call with Clark, and here's what we decided that I'm going to do. I need every one of you freaking guys in here to help me out. The minute you see me not show up, reach out to me. Here's my phone number. Let's go. I put them in an environment to succeed. And it's because I've done it so many times, and nobody's different. You talk about imposter syndrome. I used to have that till I spoke in a prison and I spoke at these high performing places and realized that everybody from the prisoner to the guy running this multi-million-dollar company and everybody in between was the exact same person. They're the exact same person. They're scared, they're afraid, they're alone, they're rejected. Money doesn't matter. None of it matters, man.
It definitely
And
takes a village, and I like that you give people the access to a community. You have them put themselves out there in a safe but public forum of like-minded individuals so they can help hold each other accountable, because we all operate at different wavelengths and have justifications and excuses, and just being able to call each other out in a respectful manner, but also like the jokes that take place. Sometimes it needs to be in an aggressive manner. And one of my favorite quotes right now that a really good friend of mine shared with me is, success is in the agency of others. And if you try to do it all by yourself, like you're probably going to fail. But if you put it out there and you let people know that on occasion you're going to need help, that's the highest form of masculinity, in my opinion, is your ability and willingness to ask for and receive help. I add receive because you have to be willing to receive it. You have to be open and coachable to all of those things. Have you ever found that some of these high-performing people are kind of like, screw you, Clark. Like, I don't need this bullshit in my life. Like, I'll just go get help from somebody else. I don't care about the money. Like, your X, Y, and Z name that they want to throw out, because hurt people hurt people. They're probably disappointed in themselves because their actions did not align with the pursuit or the goals that they set. And then, this particular philosophy failed. What do you do next?
you either let them go, and I've had situations like that. Very, very, very high level athlete. And it's probably, looking back in hindsight, when I assess the situation, embarrassment, because he was such a high level athlete and he was no longer that high level athlete. And I put him in a position to win. I put him back in the locker room, and he acted as if that wasn't what he wanted. I hired you. I want you. You're who I got. I said, well, you have me. You have access to my phone number. You have me. I have a 3-second rule. You hire me to coach you. You text me, you call me, whatever. I get back to you within 3 seconds. 100%. So I said, when did I ever not get back to you? Well, this whole group thing, I'm not into group stuff. I said, well, you're not going to be successful then. I'm just going to be honest with you. You're not going to be successful. And I've reached out to this guy on multiple occasions to no avail. He's not responded. And I know that if I saw him, the physical representation would be exactly as it was when he came to me, or even worse, because he hasn't done anything noteworthy to really make an improvement to get to where he wants to go. I just know these things. I've done it too many times, and I don't count it as a failure or anything like that. It's like, oh, well.
It's a data point and a learning experience for sure.
Yeah. And I move on. And eventually they'll either come back or they'll find someone that maybe they resonate with better, that they will allow, because you do need a village to raise a child. It's so hard to do this just one-on-one. It's so
tough.
hard,
When you mention the 3-second rule, man, how do you draw boundaries around that? Right? Like, you're not artificial intelligence. You're not a human app. You definitely have other people in your team that can get back to clients and people that you work with. But how do you carve out time for you, where you're not dancing on your phone back and forth trying to answer messages, and you're not, messing around on an Apple Watch, which we see time and time again. You're not distracted. Clearly, with a physique like yours and the consistency that you've applied for the last 60 years, you have extreme focus. And I'm sure that's potentially 1, 2, probably sometimes 3 sessions a day. How do you blind out all the noise and get time for you amongst trying to have an awesome service and business?
The beauty of the men that I work with, because they're high achievers, they don't want to waste any time. They don't want to be on the phone with me. They just want an immediate answer, an immediate solution, because their business is about solutions. They hire people, managers, and put people in positions to not come back and give this long dissertation about, well, when we looked at this, it's like, what's the solution to the problem? That's all I want to know. I got shit to do. So that's what I do. So what I do with every single one of the guys that I personally coach with is I make them text me every single morning with a number in those 5 principles: mindset, meals, movement, community, and integrity. So every morning I wake up to 5 numbers. If they're a 7 or above, I just say, great job, Bryce. Make it a great day, bro. Proud of you. Done. That's it. If it's below a 6 in any category, Bryce, bro, come on, man. What happened? Why are you at a 4 in nutrition, dude? We talked about this. And then they'll hit me back and go, I know, man. And immediately they admit and they get themselves back on track because I tell them in a way, it's like, dude, really? Are you going to waste your time and mine? And the first thing I tell them is this: you're not buying my time. You're buying results. Let's make that very clear. I'm not sitting here talking to you all day on the phone because conversation isn't what gets results. Actionable items are what gets results. Yeah. So if I said, text me every morning and I need you at a 7 or above, that's my expectation of a guy who's reached the level of success that you have. So what is it? What am I missing out on here? How can I improve what I'm doing? And they'll say, well, it's not you, Clark. You're doing a great job, man. You always answer like you said. I'm like, okay. So how can I help you not eat that damn donut in the office again? You're the boss. Don't tell them to bring it anymore.
If they're seeking your approval and validation from you and justification for the money spent on this service, how do you prevent them from lying? How do you prevent them like just putting 7s across the board because they're super busy, they're going through a divorce, they're frustrated with X, Y, and Z problems in their life, and they're like, I don't want to deal with Clark's stuff today. I'm just going to throw a 7 there so he leaves me alone.
That's why I put integrity as the last one. It used to be supplementation. Mm-hmm. The number 5 was supplementation. So I moved that into the nutrition part, the meals part. And when I'm explaining it to you, I say, okay, integrity is probably not something that you hear a lot about in a fitness program. But let me tell you why I put that in there, Bryce. I put that in there because I know at some point you're going to feel like not being honest with me. I know at some point you're going to do something and you think, he don't need to know. You're a man of integrity. And I'm asking you to be a man of integrity. When you give me that number on every one of those, I can't help you unless you're being honest. And I'm not here to beat you up. I'm here to get you moving in the right direction. So unless you're being a man of integrity with reporting to me and also with your life otherwise, like if you told me you don't want to drink for the next 30 days and you have a drink, don't lie to me. I'm not perfect, bro. Come on, man. We're just 2 guys trying to figure this out. Then I kind of lighten it up and I appeal to them on a like, come on, bro. And then I'm vulnerable. And I'm the most vulnerable, honest guy, like putting all my stuff out there. And these guys look at me and go, damn, Clark just tells it like it is. Like struggles in my marriage, shit that I did wrong. If I went on the internet and looked at porn or did something stupid, I'm going to tell them, like, guys, listen, I messed up. I shouldn't have done this. And I'm letting you know that Coach Clark doesn't have it all together. Yeah, I look better than all of you. And that's the only reason you signed up on my program. But that doesn't make me impervious to any of this. No different than I'm not a guy who can't get cancer. Clearly I can.
No, it's very well said. And I sent out a staff email a few weeks ago to our team and just helped them understand that vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And I got a question back where somebody was like, well, sometimes I feel the pressure that I have to have it all together and there's going to be judgment from the client base and X, Y, and Z. And I was like, well, maybe at the onset. But when you lean into that judgment a little bit more and you unpack it and untether it a little bit, there's a little bit more there. And I think it humanizes to help people understand that we all make mistakes, but we should strive to not make 2 in a row, right? Once you make that first one, you catch yourself on, you're like, okay, I hold myself to a standard. I need to have, whatever consequences that I need to suffer, but then simultaneously I need to have forgiveness and grace so that I can move the needle in the right direction and not necessarily have backward momentum or stagnation, because in my opinion, both of those things are hell's waiting room.
Yeah. I love the not making 2 mistakes in a row thing because, it's easy to make one, but then if you do it again, you're just making a choice at that point. Yeah,
man. I love your approach. I also think it's really cool that you throw in there how you're you're really in the pursuit of helping people increase confidence. And that comes through habits. Confidence, in my opinion, is built through a track record where you can look back and know that you consistently just did the next right thing. And then as a byproduct, you look yourself in the mirror and you're like, I am who I say I am. And that's super cool that you're helping these guys build that confidence outside of just the business boardroom. As we wrap things up, man, I just kind of want to touch on the fitness industry. And, I'm curious, you've been in the space a long time. How has the fitness industry kind of evolved over the course of your experience in that arena?
More opportunity, man. There's opportunity abound. It's like the gold rush. It's people going from the east and west and putting a flag down on their land and claiming it. It's still abundant, even though we're in the infancy stages of what the possibilities are with social media and AI and all of these things that didn't exist when I was being an influencer just through magazine covers. And there were 5 of us, like, that were the guys, right? So if you are someone who seeks an opportunity in any field, and fitness being the one that we're talking about, it's there. You just have to do the work. You have to be a person of value. If you're bought into the fact that you look better than everybody on the internet, I had to correct a guy the other day. He was sharing his frustrations and he was saying, I'm the only one on the internet telling the truth about this and that and the other thing. Why am I not getting this and that? And I said, guy, relax. Don't be so angry. First and foremost, you are not the only one on the internet being honest. There are tens of thousands of people sharing positive messages on here who feel equally as frustrated as you do about the fact that they don't have as many followers as someone else who you feel isn't doing a good job as you. You need to take your eyes off of that person, keep them on yourself, and just continue to do a great job and let the chips fall where they may. Learn more, hire the right people, improve your service, take a step back and quiz your people that you're servicing and say, how can I get better? Don't sit here and complain. And he reached back out to me and he said, thank you. I'm not mad. I said, well, you sure sound like it. I said, and the only reason I'm saying that is because I understand that frustration, but I've been able to pull it back and just stay laser focused and realize, man, there is opportunity left and right. And at the age of 60, I'm getting more opportunity now than I ever have. And it's because of the fact that social media is here for us to show companies what we're capable of.
That's good stuff, man. What's the worst advice you've ever received?
The worst advice I ever received. I listened to someone else, and this is the first thing that popped in my mind, so I'm just going to run with it. I listened to somebody else tell me how I should have my wedding. And it was horrible advice. And my wife and I were talking about it the other day. We didn't have dancing. We didn't have alcohol. We didn't have all of this stuff that just wasn't in alignment with the people who were coming to celebrate with us. It was like, what the hell is this? It was horrible advice.
Isn't that interesting? Like, there's our intrinsic intuition, and we should always kind of lean towards that a little bit as it's our guiding compass. But sometimes, given the nature of stress or where we are in our journey, we get infiltrated by the outside noise, and then it leads to decisions that we're like, that probably wasn't the best alignment. On that same category, or in that same field of play, what's the best advice that you've ever received?
I mentioned it a little bit earlier, and it was from a mentor by the name of Ed Cole. You're only committed to what you confess. And I had mentioned this earlier. The more I do these podcasts, the more I say all of this stuff that might seem like, oh, Clark's putting on a show or whatever. I'm not. This is me 24/7. But as I hear it and as it comes out of my mouth, now I'm committed to what I confess. So you know what I'm going to do right when I leave here, right now, when we're done with this podcast?
Go give your wife a big hug.
There you go. That's it, because that's my next best move. And that's the person closest to me. She's right here. And I'm going to walk out of this room, and I know exactly what my wife is going to say. She's going to scream, I don't know. And that is in response to me, every time I do this, walking out of the room, screaming, why am I so damn good at what I do? And then they all just say, I don't know. It's the way God made you. So that's kind of like the ebb and flow of what happens in here. So that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to go hug my wife, and that you're only committed to what you confess is the best advice that I ever got from Ed Cole. And that is me, doing that. I've confessed that here. I want to be a better husband, and I'm immediately going to go do that.
Well, in my opinion, I think that you're very good at what you do because of your willingness to be vulnerable and your willingness to ask for help. And I heard a cool story when you were going through the famous Paul Chek's education system and you were going through something around back and chest or back and abs or something like that. And you kind of got to a point where the jargon was a little above your pay grade. You couldn't totally comprehend it. And within the course framework, you found his phone number. And I've always been a big proponent of that, and these people are smarter than me. They're doing it better than me. I'm going to reach out to them for advice. And you gave Paul a call. And he said to you, man, learning is in layers. You'll get it when you get it. And then you didn't totally understand that or grasp that at the time. And then after a little bit of time passed, you remembered what he said. And you were going through a workout, and all of a sudden it hit you like a ton of bricks. And to have the courage and the ego deconstruction to ask for help, I think that's why you are the way you are, and I admire it, and I appreciate you sharing that story. And I'm very, very thankful to have you on today and cross paths with you. It's been quite a pleasure, my man.
Bryce, brother, thank you for being such a great host and such a great interviewer and doing your homework on me, man. That really impressed me. You are so good, young man, at what you do. You are so good. So with that being said, thank you for the opportunity, and hit me back, and I'll catch you later, man.
I appreciate you, Clark. For those of you listening or observing on YouTube, please rate, review, subscribe, and remember, greatness is forged, not found. Till next time.